If you were born between 1965 and 1980, I have some devastating news for you. You're supposed to retire in the next 10 to 15 years, but according to recent studies, the average Gen Xer is $400,000 short of what they'll actually need. Not behind schedule, not a little unprepared, $400,000 short. And here's what makes this a full blown crisis. This is the first generation in modern American history that will be worse off in retirement than their parents. The scary part, most Gen Xers don't even realize how bad it is yet, and the clock is running out. This is the retirement apocalypse nobody's talking about. Let's talk about what retirement is supposed to look like versus what it actually looks like for Gen X. Financial advisors say you need about $1 million saved to retire comfortably. Some say even more depending on where you live and your lifestyle. The idea is that you can withdraw about 4% per year and live off that plus Social Security. So, where does Gen X actually stand? The median retirement savings for Gen X is $64,000, not the average. The median. That means half of all Gen Xers have less than that. Let me put that in perspective. If you retire with $64,000 and follow the 4% rule, you're pulling out about $2,500 per year. That's $200 a month. Try living on Social Security plus $200 a month. You can't. But it gets worse when you look at who Gen X actually is and what they've been through. Gen X didn't just get unlucky, they got hit with a perfect storm of economic disasters that destroyed their ability to build wealth. First, they entered the workforce right as pensions were disappearing. Their parents had pensions. You worked 30 years, you got a guaranteed income for life. Gen X got 401s instead, which sounds good until you realize it puts all the risk on you. And most people have no idea how to invest. Then came the dot-com crash in 2000. Gen X was just starting to build retirement savings, and the market tanked. A lot of them panicked and pulled their money out, locking in losses. They barely recovered from that, and then 2008 hit. The Great Recession destroyed Gen X. They lost jobs, they lost homes, they drained retirement accounts just to survive. Many of them were in their peak earning years, the time when you're supposed to be saving the most, and instead they were rebuilding from zero. And just when they started recovering from 2008, COVID hit in 2020. More job losses, more instability, more retirement accounts raided to pay bills. Gen X has been financially traumatized 3 separate times in 25 years, but there's something even worse happening that nobody talks about. Gen X isn't just trying to save for themselves, they're getting crushed from both sides. This is the sandwich generation. They're supporting their aging parents while still financially helping their adult children. Their parents are living longer than any generation in history, which sounds great until you realize many of them didn't save enough either. Long-term care costs are insane. Nursing homes can run $8,000 to $10,000 a month. Medicare doesn't cover most of it. So who pays? Gen X does. At the same time, their kids are struggling worse than they did. Student loan debt, insane housing costs, stagnant wages. A lot of Gen X parents are still supporting kids in their 20s and 30s because those kids literally cannot afford to live independently. 18% of Gen Xers took out student loans not for themselves, but for their children or grandchildren. Think about that. They're going into debt to help their kids get educated, which means they're sabotaging their own retirement. And here's the brutal reality. You cannot take out a loan for retirement. You can borrow for college, you can borrow for a house, you can borrow for a car. But when you're 70 years old and broke, there's no loan for that. You're just broke. So Gen X is sacrificing their own future to support everyone else. Let's run the actual numbers on what Gen X is facing because when you see it on paper, it's terrifying. The average Gen Xer is 50 years old right now. They want to retire at 67. That gives them 17 years. They have $64,000 saved. They need at least 1 million. That's a gap of $936,000. To make up that gap in 17 years, even with compound interest, they would need to save about $3,000 per month. Every single month for 17 straight years. The median household income for Gen X is about $75,000 a year. After taxes, that's maybe $55,000 take home. You want them to save $3,000 a month? That's $36,000 a year. That's 2/3 of their take home pay. It's mathematically impossible for most of them. So what happens? They keep working. They push retirement back to 70, to 72, to 75. Some will work until they physically cannot anymore. And even that might not be a choice they get to make. Here's what the retirement industry doesn't want you to know. Most Gen Xers won't actually get to choose when they retire. Studies show that nearly half of all workers are forced into retirement earlier than planned. Health issues, layoffs, caregiving responsibilities, ageism in the workplace. You don't get to work until 75 if your body gives out at 68 or your company decides they'd rather hire someone younger and cheaper. And when you're forced to retire early with almost no savings, you end up completely dependent on Social Security. The average Social Security check is about $1,800 a month. Try paying rent, utilities, food, health care, and everything else on $1,800 a month. You can't. So what actually happens to Gen Xers who can't retire? Some move in with their kids, which is deeply humiliating for a generation that values independence. Some keep working part-time jobs into their 70s, greeters at Walmart, delivery drivers, whatever they can physically do. Some end up in poverty. This isn't a distant problem. This is happening right now to the oldest Gen Xers, and it's about to get much worse. We're looking at millions of people hitting retirement age in the next decade with almost nothing saved. This is going to be a social crisis on a scale we haven't seen since the Great Depression, and society is completely unprepared for it. So, what do you do if you're Gen X and you just realized you're screwed? First, stop pretending it'll work itself out. It won't. The math doesn't work. You need a plan right now. Second, if you're still supporting adult children financially, you need to have a hard conversation. You cannot sacrifice your retirement for their comfort. It sounds harsh, but if you go broke, you'll end up being their burden anyway. Third, maximize every tax-advantaged account you have. 401k, IRA, HSA, if you have one. The tax breaks are literally free money. Fourth, plan to work longer than you want to. I know that's not what you want to hear, but every extra year you work is a year you're not drawing down savings. And a year Social Security grows. And fifth, get ruthless about cutting expenses now. The lifestyle you have at 50 cannot be the lifestyle you have at 70. Start adjusting now instead of being forced to adjust later. This generation got dealt a terrible hand. They survived multiple recessions, disappearing pensions, wage stagnation, and they're getting squeezed from both sides by family obligations. None of this is their fault, but it is their reality. If you're Gen X, leave a comment and tell me where you actually stand. Are you on track, behind, or completely screwed? And if you know someone in this generation who needs to see this, share it with them. If you want me to break down retirement strategies specifically for people who are behind, or expose why Social Security might not be there when you need it, let me know what to cover next. The retirement crisis is real, and it's coming faster than anyone thinks.